Hey guys, Churchy here. So in this video, I just want to talk to you about the upcoming Outward Definitive Edition and just the information we know so far about it. This is just information that I've been able to gather from a wiki post back in December and the much more recent dev diary that they released. So first up, some general information about the Definitive Edition. It should be releasing sometime this year, 2022. People who own the base game plus all the DLC will get the Definitive Edition for free. There will be an Xbox Series release and a PlayStation 5 release. They've boosted the graphics on the console, bringing it more in line with the PC graphics. I think that includes a 60 FPS frame rate. There may also be some other subtle visual and audio improvements. Apparently you can hear the rain now. The DLCs are included with the Definitive Edition, so that's the Soroborians and the Three Brothers DLCs. Save games from the original Outward will not be transferable. Part of that is to do with the new stash mechanics, which I'll get into in a minute. Modding support will remain intact, and there's also been numerous bug fixes. So, onto some quality of life changes. It sounds like the enchanting will now be less fiddly and finicky. It sounds like they've made that a bit smoother. There's also better crafting menus. There's also now a shared stash between the houses in each region, and you'll be able to access your stash in co-op, and players cannot interact with each other's stashes. So the stash changes sound like a pretty good one to me. A little bit immersion breaking for some people, but I think overall that's going to be a really, really positive change, because it just means it's going to be much more convenient storing all your stuff and being able to access it in any region of the game. Basically, it used to be a bit of a problem because you'd often find yourself backtracking all the way to, say, from Levant to Cierzo or just all around the map, because you'd find yourself in a situation where, oh, I've accidentally left an item all the way back in Cierzo and now I'm in the Abrassar and I can't get the item I need. So that'll be really, really convenient, I think. Campfires and plant tents can now be removed from the game world. That's also a really nice change. It's quite easy to get the campfires and plant tents and stuff stacking up if you're being a bit stupid, and they can lag up the game and stuff, so that's nice to have. Apparently it'll also be easier to detect what enemies are strong or weak against, and that's due to some UI changes. It sounds like what's going to happen is the life bar on the enemy will flash to convey whether they're resistant or weak to something. Not 100% about that, but that's what it sounds like will happen. Overall, it sounds like there's basically just been quite a variety of positive UI changes just to make things just look cleaner and better. Another one in that regard is that you'll be able to see all your crafting recipes just whenever, rather than having it limited to having to have the crafting station. So you used to have to be at a certain crafting station to see those recipes. Now it sounds like you'll be able to see all your recipes at any crafting station. So that'll be kind of handy, I think. Also, this one's a little bit, I'm not sure where I sit on this one, and this may change, or I'm not sure. But, I feel like a lot of people will be a bit iffy about this one, but basically now towns will reset, and that means no more hobo camps. But I think that won't be such a big deal really with the stash changes. But it's just, I don't know. It was one of the simple pleasures in Outward, It was one of those like really satisfying things, just setting up your hobo camp in each city. And it sounds like that just won't be a thing anymore. But, you win some, you lose some. Okay, so onto some DLC and main game adjustments. The Soroborians and the Three Brothers DLC content has been spread into the main game regions to improve immersion and give players more access to the DLC content throughout their playthrough. A lot of that stuff was kind of gated behind the DLC in a sense, because it was very much just locked in one region, so you couldn't really get into enchanting too much in any of the base game regions, because you had to go to the Antique Plateau to get the arcane elementals. But speaking of that, there may be some DLC enemies in the vanilla zones. At the very least, arcane elementals will be present in the vanilla areas, so that should make enchanting less gated behind a single region, which I think is a really good change, because I definitely did notice that. And honestly, I think it'll just make the game more interesting. So another really good change that they've made is that there's now better distribution of materials in New Sirocco. It's now less RNG based, and you can trade for your desired ingredients at the price of a few samples. So one of the big problems with the Three Brothers DLC was that when you're building up the town you get to build, New Sirocco, you need specific ingredients to make some of the buildings, and those ingredients you get by trading in samples that you go out into the region and gather. But the problem is that the chances of getting the ingredient you need were really, really low because the system was so RNG based. So it could become a really, really sort of boring grind. But now with this change, it's much less RNG based because you've actually got a way to get the ingredient that you want by just trading a few samples. So in my opinion, that is a great change. They've also overhauled some areas that, in their words, showed promise but lacked in their original execution, and they've now made those experiences more robust. One example they gave of this was the Vendavil Fortress. So it sounds like they'll be making some of these areas just a little bit more interesting and little bit more fleshed out. They also mentioned the interconnected dungeons, so the Forge Master dungeon in the Soroborians DLC. So I'm quite interested to see what changes they've made in that regard, because I think, I mean, I myself, I just enjoyed those dungeons anyway and thought they were really cool. So the fact that they've mentioned those ones kind of excites me quite a bit, because it'll be really interesting to see what they've added and how they've made those even better, sort of. So yeah, excited for that one. They've also mentioned that there has been a lot of changes to enemy difficulty to make certain monsters and areas that were intended for late game more challenging and just much more unlikely to be doable on a new character. Part of these changes that they've mentioned was they've made stability changes to some of the enemies. So I think this will be interesting. I mean, honestly, this is one that you'll just have to kind of play and see what changes they've made. But I mean, even throughout their patches that they released, there's definitely been numerous times where they've buffed enemies and made certain things much more difficult. So it will be interesting to see what changes they've made here. They've also mentioned that there's been tweaks and balancing of some skills. It sounds like it's pretty broad again, so it seems like they've done quite a bit in terms of just enemies and your skills and abilities as well. So yeah, I don't know. I'm quite interested to see kind of how that plays out and whether it feels good or bad, or, you know, you just have to wait and see. They've also added new content, so this is a bit of an exciting one. There's no new region or anything like that, but they have added unique encounters into most dungeons to add sort of a unique twist on your adventures. So that sounds pretty cool. It seems like, well, based on the dev diary, it seemed like it may just be sort of unique enemies or something, but I'm not 100% about that. But if nothing else, it just sounds like there's some new interesting stuff that will happen when you're just exploring. So that's great. There's also new defeat scenarios. It seems like there might be quite a few. I think that's going to be pretty cool. And also they've added additional information to the defeat scenarios. So when you are defeated and you wake up in some random place, you'll actually know how much time has passed by, or if an item was broken or stolen or something like that. It seems like there's little UI notifications that will pop up and tell you. So that's a really good change, especially since some of the quests are, you know, time related. So if a certain amount of time passes, you can fail quests. So if you are defeated and then know, like, oh, I've lost 8 hours or whatever, or 8 days or whatever, then it's that will be handy to know. Very useful information to have. They've also added new illnesses, so this should kind of increase the variety of challenges available outside of combat, which I think is pretty interesting. I think the survival mechanics and the diseases and everything, all of that stuff has always been, I feel like they've always got it just right in Outward. Like it can be challenging at times, but it's never overbearing, and it never feels like a chore to manage. So I think adding more in that same vein will be really interesting and really, really good. So yeah, that's pretty much all the information that I've been able to gather about the Outward Definitive Edition. I am quite excited to jump back in to Outward with this Definitive Edition, and I think it's going to be pretty fun starting with nothing again. Like, because saves aren't transferable, I'll be starting from just 0, and that'll be really cool. And I think to kind of add on from that, the fact that it sounds like they've rebalanced a lot of enemies and skills and stuff, everything should feel pretty fresh. So it's going to be fun just building up a stash of goods and being able to access that from the other regions and just getting out and exploring again, basically. Outward is one of my favorite games, and yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what they've done with it in the Definitive Edition. And I'm also excited to see what projects 9 Dot Studios works on next. So yeah, I'll be looking forward to that as well. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and thank you to the legends supporting me on Patreon. I could not be doing this stuff without you guys, and I really, really appreciate the support. It means a lot to me. But yeah, that is it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Have a good day or night, whichever it may be. Peace.